Welcome to the topic on grasses and grasslands. In the part 3, which will remain as the last part of the topic, we shall try to have a discourse on such aspects of the grasslands as ecological categorization of world grasslands, classification of grasslands of Indian region, and strategies for sustainable grassland and rangeland management.
Now, categorization of world grasslands. Based on their physiognomy and habitat, the grasslands of the world are categorized into the following 7 types. Number 1, high grass savannas, grasses in the range of 1.5 meter to 4 meter in height. Annual rainfall in those fall from 63 to 190 centimeters with dry hot season. Each year the area becomes from a grassy swamp to dry hot desert. Productivity is not high. Savanna is in Africa, South America and South Asia are derived from tropical rainforests by cutting, burning and shifting cultivation. The area of these grasslands is 11 million square kilometers. Number 2 type of grasslands, tall grass savannas known as low veld or tree steppes. Grass is 1 meter to 1.5 meter tall with trees 3 meters to 10 meter high, scattered and umbrella like. Chiefly the grasses are andropogons with a mixture of legumes. The annual rainfall here ranges between 75 centimeters to 200 centimeters. These form excellent grazing lands. The area of these grasslands is about 1400 million square kilometers and is derived by destruction of dry forests. Area of distribution is in the tropics and subtropics in South America, Africa, India and Australia. Now, tall grasslands, prairies in North America, pampas, South America, high veld in South Africa are good grazing lands of blue stem grasses, setipa and wheat grasses. Climate is temperate with 50 centimeters to 100 centimeters rainfall. Soil is deep and rich. Chernozem in the drier regions, short drought rest period is followed by long cold rest period. These are excellent grazing lands. There are 5.5 million square kilometers of them. Fire and biotic actions are responsible for their occurrence and maintenance. Now, short grasses, only few inches tall in temperate regions. Rainfall between 35 centimeters and 75 centimeters with long drought and cold rest period. Grama, buffalo grass and setipas are dominant grasses here. Dry farming is prevalent in the areas. Soil is dark brown with carbonate accumulated at a depth of 20 centimeters to 1 meter below the surface. Area of these grasslands is about 3 million square kilometers in North America, South America, Africa and Russia. Then there are desert grasses, savanna, called as thorn bush steppes. Rainfall here is between 25 centimeters to 50 centimeters with a long hot drought period. Their area is about 6 million square kilometers with low carrying capacity and about 2.5 million square kilometer under agriculture, producing cotton, sorghum and peanuts. Now, 6 type of grasslands is mountain grasslands, meadows. These occur in the high mountains in the tropics and are caused by cutting and burning of temperate forests of the mountains. Temperate climate with 100 centimeters to 150 centimeters rainfall. These form good grazing lands and produce coffee and bananas. They occupy about 3.5 million square kilometers. There is one more kind of that's marsh grasses or swamps grasslands. These occur in swampy areas and consist of coarse grasses, good for birds and animals. They occupy about 2 million square kilometers. Global area distribution of grasslands. Grasslands of India, based on their floral characteristics, Whyte has recognized 8 types of grasslands in India. Ecological status of grasslands of India has been a debatable point. Bohr and Champion considered that climax vegetation of India would be either forests or desert vegetation. Accordingly, the grasslands are all existing due to biotic activities like lopping, burning, shifting cultivation, and grazing of the forests for the last several thousand years. The long-term agricultural practices have converted much of the land into agroclimax, where the climax vegetation is now cultivated crops. These agroclimax areas and biotically disturbed forests provide niche for the grassland species. On the Nilgiris in South India and the grasslands, meadows are maintained by frost factor, which kills the tree seedlings when they reach the upper reaches of hilltops into the meadows. In Punjab, the grasslands are mostly cleared up for agriculture purposes. Kashmir scenario. Pasture lands or rangelands form an important part of the rural agro ecosystem of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh with its characteristic producer, consumer and decomposer subsystems. In general, here two kinds of areas are used as grazing grasslands or pasture lands. The lowland non-agriculturable grazing areas and the mountainous areas. The mountainous areas include the slopey foot zone, the subalpine and alpine meadows. Besides, the post-harvest croplands are also temporarily used as pasture lands because during the crop season, these develop some of the best known nutritious fodder grasses, plants in association with crop plants. The grazing practice in Jammu and Kashmir is the traditional one and rough and not ecologically or scientifically managed. The increasing pressure from various biotic factors has led to exploitation of these grasslands or pasture lands beyond their carrying capacity. As a result, many of our rich grasslands and meadows have turned into barren, non-productive areas with inrush of obnoxious and unpalatable invasive weed populations. There are about 2,500 kilometers square of pasture lands in Kashmir, for example, and these constitute 42% of the forest area. 12 animals are grazing per hectare or 80 meters square are available per animal, while tolerable threshold is 1 cattle per 15 hectares of grassland. And accordingly, Kashmir Valley pasture lands can support only 5 lakh animal units as per rest of the Himalayan grasslands, where it is only 1 animal unit per half hectare area. Overall, there is an annual addition of 50,000 animals to the already existing 30 lakh animals. Because of biotic interference in the form of overgrazing and frequent fires, many of our native grass species might have already turned extinct, and many more may be seen to be at the verge of extinction. There is thus a dire need for attending to or monitoring our native grass flora and grasslands. Besides destruction of 23% of the standing vegetation by trampling by cattle, the quantum of herbage removal exceeds the amount regenerated. Native grasses here in our state have never been used to develop new pastures, meadows, or for soil erosion control. There have also been no efforts for conservation and development of grasses, grasslands, and rangelands. The distribution of 8 major grassland types of India, according to Whyte, can be seen on the separate table. The grasslands on which many of the world's livestock depend are known as rangelands and are a vital component of global food, leather, and wool production. When properly managed, grasslands and the livestock they support can provide useful products ad infinitum. Regrettably, the vast majority of the world's rangelands is unsustainably utilized. Thus, rangelands, grasslands on which livestock graze are an important element of the global agricultural system. When properly managed, they can be a sustainable food source. Now, about their degradation. Rangelands or grasslands start to deteriorate when there is little or no recovery time between grazing and when plants are so heavily grazed that their metabolic reserve is removed. Otherwise, grasses are rather hardy plants that are adapted to the sometimes harsh conditions of the world's grassland biomes. For example, periodic drought and even occasional fire. Grasses can withstand drought because their roots extend deep into the ground, underground water supplies. They also store enormous amounts of nutrients that permit the plant to regrow after drought or periodic fires. They also start to degrade when they are infested by weeds, in which their pasture quality also deteriorates. Now, let's come to the final point of our topic, that is sustainable grassland or rangeland management. Worldwide, the conditions of grasslands, rangelands appears to be less than optimum. The United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, estimates that nearly 75% of the world's rangelands are at least moderately desertified, with a reduction in carrying capacity of at least 25%. The major culprit in this deterioration is overgrazing. In addition to desertification, this all too common practice results in severe erosion, declines in groundwater, loss of wildlife, and invasions of weeds. Forest rangelands are also damaged by livestock. In some regions, branches are cut from trees, that is, lopping is done for animal food. Entire forests are removed to make way for cattle ranches. In India, for instance, grasslands do not provide enough food for the country's over 196 million cattle, which forces people to run to state forests and other lands. As such, a large percentage of publicly and privately owned grasslands, rangelands in the countries of the world have been degraded because of unsustainable land management practices such as overgrazing. Natural grasslands have been grazed by native species for thousands of years with no apparent ill effects. In fact, grazing may benefit grasslands, for grazers such as deer and cattle help to spread seeds and fertilize the soil. The hooves of these animals pulverize rock and make soil. They also drive seeds into the soil. Grasses are well adapted to grazing pressure, and grasslands and herbivores can coexist in a sustainable relationship that is beneficial to both. Sustainable use of grasslands and rangelands. Sustainable grazing management can, if properly carried out, protect or even improve the quality of rangelands. The components of sustainable range management, often referred to as the basic techniques of range management, include: number one, controlling livestock numbers or living within the limits. Rangeland and pasture use must be adjusted according to the carrying capacity of the land, which varies from one year to the next with the weather. Those who cannot adjust their herd size run the risk of lowering the carrying capacity of their land and destroying grazing opportunities. Second aspect of sustainable range management is deferred grazing. Cattle can be shifted from one pasture to another to allow grasses to regenerate, recover, mature, and produce seeds. This method, called rotational grazing, enhances the condition of a rangeland and may increase the carrying capacity in the long run. In many instances, rotating cattle from one field to the next appears to be promoting a healthier pasture with a diverse array of species. This in turn seems to benefit native bird species. Rotational grazing patterns must be tailored to the local conditions and ecosystem. Some farmers practice such rotational schemes. Others may require more complicated schemes. Rotational grazing in various forms is a simple yet highly effective and sustainable strategy that benefits ranchers, the economy, and the environment. It increases the vigor of plants and enhances their nutritional value. Furthermore, it helps to ensure a more diverse ecosystem beneficial to the native species. Number third point in this sustainable use, controlling the distribution of livestock. Livestock often aggregate around water sources, stock ponds, and natural water sources. A more economical way of ensuring a more uniform grazing pattern is to strategically locate water sources and salt licks in areas that are underused. Number fourth point in this sustainable management of grasslands, rangelands is restoring and improving the quality of rangeland. Restoration of degraded grasslands, for example, by applying fertilizer or reseeding the land is an essential element of building a sustainable system of livestock production. Efforts to boost the productivity of land, including periodic prescribed burning, are also helpful in this regard. Number fifth point is revamping government policies in this sustainable management of grasslands. Many ill-conceived government policies result in the deterioration of publicly owned rangelands. To promote sustainable use of grasslands, government policies should be based on objective scientific criteria. Number sixth point in this sustainable management of grazing lands, sustainable livestock production. In many places, cattle and other livestock are raised in confined quarters called feedlots for at least part of their life cycle. Although this practice does not affect grasslands directly, it does have a tremendous environmental impact. For example, pen-raised cattle produce huge amounts of manure in limited spaces. Much of it is dumped in landfills. At one time, farmers used the manure to fertilize their croplands. Today, however, many farmers produce only livestock and no longer grow crops. So they have less access to farmland on which to apply manure. Another problem with livestock raised in enclosures is that they require enormous quantities of grain, mostly corn and sorghum. Ironically, most farmers who supply grain to feed cattle use artificial fertilizer on their land. This system disrupts nutrient cycling and is therefore unsustainable in the long run. Meat production might have to be downsized in the long run to accommodate the growing population. Many more people can be fed on vegetarian diet than on a costlier meat-based diet. Central to all strategies are efforts to slow and perhaps stop the growth of human population.
With this, we conclude our discussion on various aspects of grasses and grasslands and hope that this would have remained beneficial. Thank you and goodbye.